Hello, my name is Ben.
And my name's Josh.
And welcome back to FPO Graduates and welcome back to another video. We're going to be talking to you today about some deadline dilemmas ahead of game week 3. And lots of you managers have 2 free transfers out there, and we're going to help guide you through what we'd be doing and looking to do for your teams for this week. So let's get straight into it. With Gabriel already being a minute's risk with Arsenal, 2 out of 2 times he hasn't started for the Gunners. We also think that there's some options here that we could replace Gabriel with, and we're hopefully going to go through a few of them and let you know which ones are sort of best to go with in this situation.
Okay, so we're going to kick things off at the back. We're going to look at some defenders that you might want to bring in, potentially for some of the defenders that maybe not get as many minutes as you first thought, or maybe just not playing as well. Obviously, there's been a few injuries at the back as well, to the likes of Reece James, John Stones, a few of those guys. So we're going to go through a few maybe cheaper options that you can bring in that look quite good, have good fixture runs going forward. So starting off, obviously, the main man himself, Malo Gusto, has been on FPL Twitter constantly this last week. Obviously, Reece James' injury means that he is the #1 choice at right back as his replacement. He started against West Ham. I thought Chelsea played quite well, to be fair, against West Ham. The goals they conceded were from set pieces, crosses, long balls, that kind of type of thing. I thought, Ward-Prowse did excellent with those deliveries. Gusto, not necessarily as offensive as Chilwell, but for 1.5 million saving, he could become a good option, could he, Ben?
Yeah, he definitely could, but I also think you've got to bear this guy in mind as a short to medium term option. Reece James is out for weeks rather than months in this situation. So for 4 million, you can't really go wrong with those fixtures that you've got coming up here for Chelsea. They're really, really nice. So I do think Malo Gusto is a great option, just one that you probably have to consider for the short to medium term. Yeah, like I said, that's the only sort of real thing that I'd look at with him. His goal involvement going forward isn't going to be as good as Chilwell, but you won't expect that for 4 million.
Yeah, and someone who is probably a bit more nailed for minutes, obviously played both 90 minutes so far, started both games, playing almost as like a left back, left centre back hybrid role with Chilwell pushing on, is Levi Colwill. Decent asset. Do you think his attacking appeal is a little bit better than we first thought, Ben? Obviously playing that sort of left back role. So against West Ham, he put a couple of crosses in, or do you think he's still, low expected goal involvement? You could potentially expect an assist here and there.
Yeah, I think his expected goal involvement is still going to be relatively low, considering he didn't produce many attacking returns when he was at Brighton anyway. But if he can solidify himself in that defence and that Chelsea defence can improve over the coming weeks, which I think they will under Pochettino, their teams never click to begin with. It takes time with them. Then I think Colwill is a much better option for the medium to long term over a Malo Gusto. For 0.5 million more, you're guaranteeing yourself a starter even when Reece James is back. So I'd definitely look, if you've got that extra 0.5 million, going for Levi Colwill because he's going to provide a lot more minutes over the entirety of the season.
Definitely. And then moving on to some different assets, obviously Destiny Udogie, we've spoken about him in the last couple of weeks as well. Obviously seen him now 2 weeks, started both games for Spurs, got taken off early in the United game. He had a booking, so it's a sensible thing to do from Postecoglou. Picking up some very offensive positions, maybe unlucky not to get an assist last week with Son's shot getting blocked. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Obviously, I've got him in my team, so probably a bit biased, but those next 3 fixtures look pretty decent for Spurs.
Yeah, they look like some 3 decent fixtures there, against a couple of them against promoted sides. I do think Spurs are going to dominate possession in those games, and they have done for one of the games at least to start the season. And they looked in control even against Manchester United. So I think Destiny Udogie is a good option. Obviously, again, you've got to be aware that these 4.5 million guys have someone else there ready to rotate in and out should you need him, because game week 6 and 7, you're probably not looking to want to start him in your team. So to maximize the points, make sure you have 1 or 2 of these guys ready to rotate in and out on the subs bench.
Yeah, and someone else that you could probably rotate in and out, who's pretty fixture-proof potentially, is Rico Henry. We saw against Spurs how attacking and dynamic he was playing in the 5-back system that they tend to deploy against those bigger teams, more threatening teams going forward. And then obviously they play that 4-back when they're playing the lesser opposition, you could say, as well. So Rico Henry, Ben, what do you think? What's your thoughts on him? Obviously, he played Tottenham and Fulham so far, and obviously you've got him in your team. Is he picking up the returns?
Yeah, he's picking up the returns, and I've benched him both times in a couple of game weeks, but I'm more than happy to, again, called on him when needed for the fixtures that they've got. They've got a nice fixture run for the medium to long term anyway. Like a lot of managers are going to have Brentford coverage in terms of Vissa or Mbeumo. And I think defensively, Brentford actually looked really good to start the season. Rick Henry plays very high up the pitch against a quality possession retaining team. But against the lesser teams, he obviously goes to a back four and his attacking appeal lessens slightly. But I do think there is still attacking appeal there. For a team like Brentford, who look really, really good, even without Tony, I do think it's a consideration for one of those rotating 4.5 million defenders.
Yeah, and then moving on to someone who's a bit more expensive, but for a reason. It's Manuel Akanji. Obviously, that Manchester City defence is doing very, very well to start the season. No goals conceded in 2 games and only 0.59 expected goals against. They're not even expected to concede 1 goal in 180 minutes of football. It's looking very solid at the back for them, Ben. Do you think Akanji is the most nailed option, or do you think that it lies elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say whether a Manchester City defender is going to be nailed on or not because at any given moment they could be dropped. But the fact that even to split down the expected goals against 0.29 against Newcastle, 0.3 against Burnley, like it's really, really good, really consistent. And I think they're going to win a lot of games to 0 this season. So having one of those City defenders, I think could be a really good move to go with for that little bit more money. You're obviously not guaranteeing starts, but at the moment you're guaranteeing sort of not many goals conceded in that team. So yeah, I think Manuel Akanji could be a great option if he retains his position in that team. We know City are very keen to move in the transfer market. They've made moves defensively and offensively, so it's never a guarantee to have a Man City starting defender.
Yeah, I think one thing with Akanji is why his minutes are so good is because he can play in any of those positions along that back line. He's very versatile, whereas someone like maybe Diaz is sort of nailed to that central defensive position. So that's one plus side, but like Ben alludes to, there is a lot of defensive coverage there now. Obviously, they are selling Laporte, but they've brought in Vardiol, there's Ake, Walker can play there, Rico Lewis. There's just endless options. So if you are going into the City defence, be prepared. It is an absolute minefield.
So next up, we've had a few questions about Manchester United. They obviously haven't started the season too well at all, not really picking up sort of where they left off at the end of last season. They struggled against Wolves and they struggled against Spurs. And the big question is, do we sell these United assets? Hopefully in this segment, we can tell you a little bit more about those players.
Yeah, so myself, I have Bruno Fernandes. Ben has Rashford and Fernandes. He went for the double up. And I think it's really interesting what we've seen so far in regards to both of these players. So against Wolves, as Ben alluded to, they did struggle in build-up, couldn't break them down. They just played 2 banks of 4 and there was no creativity there. It took for Wan-Bissaka and Varane to finally get a goal-scoring moment together. Whereas Rashford obviously playing through the middle at the moment, not out on the left. He's definitely way more threatening out on the left-hand side of the pitch. That, though, I don't think will change until Rasmus Højlund comes back into the side. Obviously, Martial played his first minutes even since pre-season. He hadn't played a minute in pre-season at the weekend. So I just don't see anyone playing down the middle, which really, for me personally, I think limits Rashford as an option. He gets far fewer touches. He can't run at defenders. He's trying to basically play hold-up play, which isn't his strongest part of his game. What's your thoughts on him, Ben, owning him? And do you think he is a sell right now?
I don't think he's a sell right now for game week 3 because Nottingham Forest at home is a decent fixture. Yes, Forest actually played really well against Arsenal and in their other game against Sheffield United. But yeah, I think Rashford is a hold for now because the Forest at home fixture is a plum fixture to really go for with Rashford. If they can, and the main issues for me in Manchester United is their midfield and the balance of that midfield. It feels a bit imbalanced where teams can pass through them too easily, and that means they lose control of the game. Where Manchester United are best is where they're controlling the game, the tempo of the game, and they can use the likes of Rashford, Bruno, to exploit spaces in behind when teams are pressing up. And I think the lack of control means Rashford isn't getting an opportunity to get a hold of the ball with time and to drive and run at players. And obviously, he doesn't get nearly as much time up top as he would do out on the left. So for now, I'd just hold him for that nice Forest fixture and sort of bear that in mind if you're making your transfers. Maybe it's sensible if you've got 2 free transfers to make one of them and save the other one for the following week. So if you needed to, you could get rid of Rashford. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Rashford. I think he's a hold for now. And let's see where we are after the Forest game.
And Bruno Fernandes, I think for me right now, is more of a hold than Marcus Rashford. He's got the data to back it up as well. Obviously, creating those 2 big chances against Spurs, missing a big chance himself. I feel like United were unlucky maybe not to get a penalty in that game. They had the Romero handball. They had the Palestri potential foul with Ben Davies as well. So there's likelihood that he could have probably scored in that game. I think United were maybe a bit unlucky, / just didn't really take their chances. So Bruno Fernandes, Nottingham Forest at home. I think if United create anything or score anything, it's usually through this man. Even for the goal against Wolves, he got the assist for Wan-Bissaka. So yeah, I think Fernandes for me, even through these fixtures, is pretty much a certain keep. I think he's playing well. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, I think Bruno Fernandes is a hold. He's on penalties. He's on most set pieces as well, and he is the one providing the underlying data, both in the Wolves game and in the Spurs game. It was probably the best Manchester United asset out there to own. Guaranteed minutes, which is also key. We know Rashford does get subbed off on 70 minutes or so. So even against the tougher teams, Bruno is going to be playing all of the minutes. He's going to be trying to hog as many of the chance creation as possible. So I do think Bruno Fernandes is the one to be holding even over Marcus Rashford. If you're looking at transferring 1 out guaranteed, I'd probably not look at Bruno to be the one that you're getting rid of as of yet.
So obviously we've told you that Rashford, Fernandes, hold them for this week. But if you're going to look to ship them on before game week 4 with their away fixture to Arsenal, who should you be looking at as some sort of replacements? Because there are a few midfielders that are absolutely popping off to start the season. We're going to start it off with Bryan Mbeumo, who's probably been the number 1 man who's been popping off. Obviously, he got 3 goals so far in the first 2 games. Obviously, on penalty duties for Brentford. He's looked fantastic, hasn't he, Ben?
Yeah, he has, and he's producing attacking returns. He maybe is slightly overperforming what he expected, but that's obviously because of the penalties that he's got early doors. And Brentford have had the most penalties out of anyone really over the last sort of 12 months or so. The fixtures look great as well going forwards, and I think this guy is definitely a potential replacement for one of the other guys. And even if you sort of have a couple of other issues in your team, I think Bryan Mbeumo has got to be top of the list for a list of replacements to go for. Brentford are playing well. He's playing well. He's on penalties, set pieces. What more could you not love about him?
Yeah, the fixture run as well is absolutely phenomenal. We got Palace at home, Bournemouth at home in the next 2. If you wanted to bring him in for game week 3, Newcastle away, I think Brentford will do well in that fixture. It sort of suits them with that 5 at the back formation as well. And then Everton at home, Nottingham Forest away. There's literally, other than the Newcastle fixture, you probably cherry pick those fixtures as a run to go for. You'd be pretty happy with it. So he's our first option. The next option is Phil Foden. Obviously, starting a lot more, played 180 minutes, which is almost unheard of with Phil Foden and the Manchester City team. Newcastle game, he lit the game alight, really. He got the assist, obviously, for the only goal in that game. What is your thoughts on him, Ben, in that fixture and overall this season as a potential option?
Yeah, I mean, he looks like at the moment, he's pretty nailed on. And for the next couple of weeks, I expect that to stay the same. Obviously, City are getting in Doku. So that's obviously going to be a bit more of a minute's risk for Foden. But at the moment, with De Bruyne out and with the structure City are playing, they need someone who's able to provide that stretch from defense to attack and provide the height in attack. And Phil Foden's going to be one of those guys playing centrally. And with the fixtures coming up, I do think it is a really good option to go for. Those who have had Foden from the beginning are seeing sort of returns. He's got that assist. He's playing well. I think Pep's starting to trust him a bit more. And like we said during pre-season, it's his season now to shine. It's now or never really for Phil Foden in terms of getting those starts for Manchester City. I anticipate that to continue for the foreseeable until at least Champions League rotation becomes a factor. So I do think at the price he's at in the Manchester City team could be a really good asset to go for. The only caveat to that is that City are not creating nearly as many chances as they did last season. They seem to be playing with a lot more control and defensive stability than last year, which therefore impacts their attacking output.
Yeah, and then moving on to some more 6.6 million options, we've got to call them now. It's the Brighton boys, Mitoma and March. And Mitoma, obviously, Ben, you've owned him, been really good to start the season, got that goal against Wolves, got another assist as well, and obviously got an assist in game week 1. So 3 returns in his first 2 is exactly what you'd want for him. 41% owned, very, very high owned asset. Are you planning on keeping him? Obviously, there are some tough fixtures coming through for Brighton with that Newcastle at home, United away. Are Brighton fixture proof going forward in those fixtures?
I think going forwards, they are more fixture proof than they are defensively. But yeah, I think in your situation, if you don't own Matoma and you're looking to buy someone, I probably would look for more of an Embuemo or a Phil Foden just for the fixtures. I think the next couple of fixtures are tough in game week 4 and 5. So maybe I'd look elsewhere for that. Matoma started the season really well, but I think you can capitalise on the fixtures, especially if you've got 2 free transfers here.
Yeah, and obviously Solly March, I mentioned him. He's played almost as many minutes as Matoma. Obviously got the 3 goals as well. Looking quite high on the XG compared to his expected assist, which is interesting. Do you think he could become a better option than Matoma just purely because of the goal threat, or do you think Matoma is probably the safer bet?
I think Matoma's a safer bet. March is overperforming his statistics at the moment to a degree, which sometimes we see at the start of the season. Sometimes we also see that levels out. I think Solly March is still a great option. If you're doubling up on the Brighton midfield/attack, it'd be March and Matoma as my top 2 picks, even over the likes of Xiao Pedro. So yeah, I do really like Solly March to pick. It's just difficult to fit all of those great midfielders in, especially if you've already got sort of a triple up on the Brighton assets. Okay, so a lot of you have been asking about Spurs. They've got a great fixture run coming up, and it's looking like we're going to potentially be having some Spurs players in our team from game week 4. So let's have a little dive into the Spurs attackers and what we can expect from them.
Yeah, so the obvious 4 is going to be Maddison, Kulusevski, Son, and Richarlison, all listed as midfielders, but that is the attacking front 4 that Postecoglou has set out in these first 2 games. James Maddison, probably been the most eye-catching one, the only one to have a price rise so far in FPL. He's 7.6 million. Obviously, got the 2 assists in the first game against Brentford. I thought he looked quite good against United as well. Obviously, not getting any attack and returns, but he's central to everything that Spurs do going forward. Came out of the stadium, though, on Saturday on crutches. He said it's precautionary, but he is going for a scan. So we have to sort of wait and see on this one. He's a bit potentially injured. What's your thoughts on it, Ben? Would you be looking to move to him right now, or would you wait for press conferences, etc.?
Yeah, I'll be waiting for the press conferences. If we find out he is fine, he'd be one of the priority transfers for this game week at 7.6 million with those 3 fixtures to come up. Looks really, really good and really promising for Maddison. He's the main talisman in that team, vice captain straight away for a reason, and on quite a few of the set pieces too. I do think he is great value for that price. And obviously, you know, he's a good creator. Goal threat, maybe not quite as much as it was before, but like I said, for that price, to get a nailed-on player who's just as creative as Phil Foden in a team that's almost just as attacking right now, is a great option to have.
100%. And then moving on, someone who I thought has impressed me in the first 2 games of this season that's maybe going under the radar a little bit is Kulusevski. Playing almost all the minutes, only 1% owned. He hasn't picked up an attack and return yet. Maybe quite unlucky not to for that Pape Sarr goal against United. He obviously put the cross in that got deflected to Pape Sarr. Fixtures, like you said, really, really good. Maybe the goal threat is not quite there. And I think that's what's potentially lacking with maybe all 4 of these options is that we haven't seen them shoot, really. They haven't been shooting and haven't had high XG chances. What's your thoughts on Kulusevski, Ben? And where do you maybe rank him in the front 4?
Yeah, I mean, Kulusevski is an option, but for me, he's starting out too wide at the moment to be in consideration. The position and the system right now doesn't lend to too many attacking returns. Like you can see here, the XG and the XA is relatively low over the first 2 games. Obviously, there's like we could see it level out over the season if Kulusevski gets more output. But for now, I'm sort of wavering on that 7 million. I do think there's better options, and there's players in this team that play in better positions, more advanced positions for the same price. So I think you could probably look elsewhere for now. Obviously, that could change with form. We know what Kulusevski's like to start the season. Last year, he was really good. He's a really hot and cold player. If he's playing well, he'll get returns every week. If he's not, he could go on a barren spell without goals or assists. So that's one to be wary of there with Dejan Kulusevski.
Yeah, and the guy you mentioned, I'm sure, is Richarlison, 7 million, obviously playing up top in that Spurs team, but worse expected data than Kulusevski, just not really been given the opportunities. I think he came out in the post-match presser on Saturday and saying that he hasn't been getting the opportunities yet, but he's sure that they will come. I think he's been okay, nothing too impressive, just hasn't really had the ball. He's been playing against 2 sides that sort of really didn't they didn't lose too many chances to, especially Brentford. I think a lot of people thought that he'd be right in there amongst the goals, but playing against a 5-back's going to be really tough. So it'll be interesting to see how they do against this opposition, because obviously they're going to play deep, potentially, not allow too many chances for Richarlison. What's your thoughts on Ben? Do you think the returns are coming, or do you think, this is maybe a bit of an avoid right now?
Yeah, it's difficult to say really, because Richarlison has been playing a full season as second fiddle to Harry Kane. So to get that sharpness back in that Spurs 11 and to really sort of get the system, it's going to take a little while. Richarlison, you need to be a bit patient with him. Goals will come from him. We know he can score in the Premier League, and it's just when he gets those chances and when it clicks with Maddison, with Kulusevski, etc. For 7 million, he is really, really cheap for a starting striker at the moment. Let's see over the next 3 games. The data isn't great, but he is playing far more advanced in better positions than Kulusevski is. So yeah, I'm gonna wait and see. It wouldn't be a go to buy, but if you've got him, I probably would hold him because the fixtures are quite nice. I do anticipate him getting an attack return or 2 in those.
Yeah, and then the final man that we haven't mentioned yet is the captain. It's Heung-min Son, 9 million, obviously, so he's coming in at a lot more expensive than the others. Again, attacking data is improved, but you sort of expect that from Son. He's on a few set pieces as well, sharing them with Maddison in some respect. 5% owned. Do you think he's worth the money, Ben, or do you think Richarlison and Maddison provide better value and you can use the cash elsewhere?
Yeah, you're looking at about 0.3 XGI per 90 over the first 2 games, which isn't too great from Son. We expect probably double that on his best season. So again, it's the positioning within the system right now. Doesn't look too confident either, but again, he is a hot and cold player. Once he gets a couple of goals, he'll be banging for him and he'll be a must-have to own. So for me, again, it's a hard pass on it, but 9 million is quite expensive, and I think you get a better output from Maddison, who is cheaper at 7.6. So for me, it's clear that Maddison is probably the best asset out of these 4.
Yeah, one thing to mention as well with Son, obviously Richarlison went off early in that United fixture, and it saw Son move to the striker position. So, there's potential value there. Say if Richarlison was to get injured, I think that's the obvious replacement right now for Spurs, as they have no real backups in that position. So that could be interesting going forward, and maybe an out of position Son, but we'll have to wait and see for that one. So on to our final dilemma this week, and it is about Xiao Pedro. Obviously started game week 1, scored the penalty. Life was good at 5.5 million, but he's risen in price, 5.6. Didn't start against Wolves. Now everyone wants to sell him. So yeah, we're going to take a look at him here. So obviously, yeah, the one start, he came on obviously against Wolves, did get booked though, hence the 0-pointer last week. Like I said, penalty duties seem to be his when he's on the pitch, but West Ham at home and then followed by 2 relatively difficult fixtures, not knowing whether he's going to get the minutes. Do you think he is a sell, Ben?
For game week 3, I'd say no. Everyone knew the risk when we were bringing him into our teams for game week 1. We were all in with the plan. We're going to hold these Brighton assets for the first 3 game weeks and then sell from game week 4 onwards. And I don't think we should deviate from that plan. As we saw from Xiao Pedro's first game, he produced some great numbers, missed a couple of big chances and scored a penalty. So I think in this game at home to West Ham United, there's every chance that he could start, score, get penalties. You name it, he could come away with a 10, 11-point haul. So 5.6 million to hold him for 1 more week is no hardship at all. And then it's quite an easy, would I say an easy sell? If he bags a hat-trick in game week 3, not many managers are going to want to sell him. So yeah, for now, he's a hold and wait and see. But a blank against West Ham at home, and you could see a few people selling him as a result of that.
Yeah, I definitely think a lot of managers will be keen to just hop off him just because when someone's a minutes risk, we see their price drop pretty quickly. We've seen it with players gone by so far this season that we thought maybe would have started, but haven't started so far. Obviously, Enciso getting 2 assists in his position as well doesn't really help matters for Xiao Pedro either. So it'll be interesting to see. But if you are looking to ship him out, maybe this game week or next, I think this man is probably the prime target to replace him. 6.1 million, Johan Visser. Obviously, you need that 0.5 million potentially to upgrade to him, but he's been on fire, hasn't he, Ben? 2 goals, 1 assist. Obviously, the assist coming from winning a penalty from Mbeumo. Do you think he's worth it, or do you think you should maybe just go with Mbeumo and save that Brentford spot?
I think Mbeumo is probably like better value, but if you can't get anyone in the midfield, which is going to be the case for a lot of managers because there's a lot of great options in midfield, I think Visser provides great value. And to bring him in for game week 4 against Bournemouth at home is a really nice fixture to bring him in for as well if you're going to move him on from Xiao Pedro. And he's low enough ownership as well to that you could make some really good gains if you have him. His XGs looks great. Obviously, his assist potential isn't up there. Like Josh said, he got the assist from winning the penalty, so that's an FPL assist rather than a traditional assist. But the fixtures look great for Brentford going forwards, and I think a double up could definitely be on the cards. We've mentioned 3 of these guys already: Rico Henry, Visser, and Mbeumo. Depending on your squad structure, definitely think you should be considering 2 of these guys to go for in your team. Okay, so that rounds up our deadline dilemmas. Let us know if we've helped with some of your deadline dilemmas. And if you have any other sort of queries, questions about Game Week 3, make sure to let us know.
Yeah, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to us as well. We'll be dropping content, 2 videos every single game week to help you guys out win your FPL mini league. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and like the video if you enjoyed it.
And as always, I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
Later. Have a good game week, everyone.